In 2005, Australian actor Russell Crowe was arrested for throwing his phone at a front desk employee at the Mercer Hotel in New York. As a former hotel front desk employee who worked in New York, I take that personally. The situation did make sense, as Crowe is known for having quite the temper, which makes him starring in a movie about a deranged man with a serious case of road rage very on brand. Unhinged is kind of that movie. He's not that crazy in real life, but oh boy, I've got some things to say about this one. I will allow Emperor Commodus to provide you with a quick summary of my thoughts on this movie. Thank you so much for watching. Before we get started, make sure to click on that subscribe button. Unhinged was the very first movie to be released widely into theaters after the start of the 2020 pandemic. While the performances are fine and nobody does crazy quite like Russell Crowe, it's loaded with dumb cliches, more plot contrivances than you can shake a stick at, and all sorts of dumb decisions made by every single character. I'm gonna spoil this movie, but it doesn't really matter because none of the stuff that happens in this film should surprise anyone who's ever seen a movie. This is one of the most predictable thrillers that has ever been made. Because apparently in 2020, it's against the law not to make a movie without a slow motion version of a popular song playing over the credits. A really bad version of Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper is here to provide that exact element for Unhinged. The movie opens with a rather large Tom Cooper, that's the character played by Russell Crowe, sitting outside of a house in his gray pickup truck. Oh, and it's like pouring rain in LA, which does happen, but not often. He then proceeds to bash down the front door of the house with a hammer, murder the woman and a man inside with that very same hammer, and then pour gasoline all over the inside of the house before setting it on fire. Oh, and before that, he takes off his wedding ring from his finger, so I guess that means the woman was his wife, or now ex-wife. Okay, movie, thanks for making it obvious. This is something they will do throughout the movie where they show you something to make it super obvious it's gonna be important. Then as he's driving away from the house for what appears to be no reason whatsoever, the entire house explodes. Something I do want to mention before I forget. His gray pickup truck is obviously a Ford. You can tell right off the bat that Ford clearly didn't want anything to do with this movie because the badge on the steering wheel is just removed and there's just a blank oval right there where the Ford badge used to be. The Ford badge on the back of the truck is gone. The Ford badge on the front is there, but it's covered up directly in front of it by like a black roll cage bar, so you can't even see it. Kia clearly also didn't want to be associated with this movie because one of their minivans gets the exact same treatment. The hero does drive a Volvo wagon, so maybe Volvo was cool with it because she's the hero. Cut to a sleeping mom on a couch. Karen Pistorius is Rachel, a single mom to a young boy named Kyle. Rachel has her own share of issues, which include her pending divorce, clients that she's just constantly disappointing and letting down, her stoner brother and his fiance living with her, and the future ex-husband trying to take away the house. She's about to have a much, much, much bigger problem when what should be a relatively minor road rage incident will go on to ruin her entire morning, lead to the death of multiple people, including her best friend, and that's just the first 10 minutes of the movie. The first 10 minutes also introduce us to a pair of candy cane scissors that will be super important later. Wink. I actually snorted and pointed at the screen like Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like in the meme. And I said out loud, she's going to use those scissors to kill the bad guy at the end of the movie. I'm not a psychic. The movie is just that stupid. The road rage incident in question escalates very quickly, and everything that happens is just so very silly. Technology fails or works at the exact right moment. Tom does that thing where he pretends to be somebody else in order to get close to someone Rachel cares about. The bad guy has what appears to be a completely coherent and detailed plan, despite that not necessarily being how road rage works. And at the end of the movie, the police just file out an incident report with Rachel, and then she leaves. Wait, what? Like a half a dozen people are dead, including the man that you stabbed in the brain with a pair of scissors. I feel like the cops should maybe do more than just fill out some paperwork. Maybe you like bring her to the station for a formal interview and get it on camera and see what exactly transpired here. Something else that I just have to say about this movie. People here do not behave anything like they do in real life. There's a sequence where she's sitting in traffic and he starts hitting her car from behind like 6 times and nobody around even bothers to like get out and see if everything's okay. They just are sitting in their cars doing nothing. The scene where Tom pretends to be friends with Rachel, he's sitting at a table in a diner with her best friend Andy, who's also her lawyer, like her divorce lawyer. And there's this typical back and forth like thriller banter on the phone during this conversation. And the bad guy Tom does a couple things. He bashes Andy's face into the table several times until he's just gushing blood. He strangles this man with his own tie, and then he slams his head on the table again and stabs him in the back of the neck with a knife. And nobody does anything. They're like, oh my God, did you see that? He just stabbed that guy to death. But they don't actually do anything. Like, nobody jumps out of their seat and is like, yo, that guy just murdered somebody. Nobody tries to help this poor guy. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. It's a packed diner in Los Angeles, California. Somebody do something. Somebody do anything. The cops do eventually show up as Tom is leaving, so at least somebody called 911. Make no mistake about it, Unhinged is a very bad movie, but that doesn't necessarily mean the performances are that bad. Karen Pistorius actually does a great job as the world-weary mom who carries everyone's burdens on her shoulders, even though some of her problems are very much of her own making. She's constantly waking up late, missing her own appointments with her clients, and could have simply alleviated this entire thing and stopped everything dead in its tracks by apologizing to Tom in the beginning during the confrontation. That's not any sort of justification for the man's behavior. He is a monster, but the movie spends a lot of time shoving that detail about her lack of apology into our faces, so I figure that it's worth mentioning. The entire movie hangs on Russell Crowe, seeing as how, you know, his unhingement is the focus of the entire thing. Crowe actually does give the role some nuance, even if Tom's insane rants about how unfair divorce lawyers are to men comes off as way too preachy. He goes buck wild here, and it's definitely something to behold. I do want to give a quick shout out to Gabriel Bateman, who plays Kyle, Rachel's young son. When it comes to young actors, he actually does a really good job here. He also played Andy Barclay in the Child's Play reboot slash reimagining from 2019 and was really good in a movie that was way better than it had any business being. Once again, I find myself reviewing a movie where I can tell you the exact background of the director in the first 30 seconds. Herky-jerky editing and weird coloring gave me the impression that Derek Borte got his start in commercials, and a quick check of Wikipedia confirmed that, yes indeed, he sure did. As I mentioned before, the actors here do fine work, but the script for this movie is a complete disaster. It's filled with every single thriller cliche that you can fit into 90 minutes. The premise is an interesting one, but it's that it simply needs to be way more clever than it actually is. Unhinged is a bad road rage movie. Falling Down is a great movie that has road rage, but it's not really a movie about that. And Changing Lanes is actually a great road rage movie that touches on bigger issues. So there you go. I gave you a pair of good movies to watch. Don't say that I don't ever do anything for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Sound off down in the comments. Tell me that Unhinged is literally the greatest movie that you have ever seen in your entire life. And I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.